Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
Welcome to this vibrant region of Kakamega. I'm your host, Austin Nyumbok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. Today we seek to answer the question, is corruption the greatest undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa? Lubino boys and St. Agnes girls will attempt to answer this question for us. Let's let the debaters take the stage and wow us now. Proposal number 1, you have 3 minutes.
Before you is Manny Kevin from Lubino Boys High School. And if you look at me, you'll see that this boy is not happy. But if you go inside my heart, I'm also happy a bit. Why am I happy? Because of SDG, the Sustainable Development Growth. I'm very happy with that program. But this morning, let us come to the main concern of this morning. Corruption. Is corruption the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa? That is the main question we are having this morning. But before I go on, world is full of fantasy. And I normally say that youth are hilarious. You may be sitting with your son, with your daughter, with your cousin, your nephew. Then he or she asks you, Mom, Dad, what is corruption? What is infrastructure? Then you go on fumbling with words. No, let me explain to you what do we mean by the term corruption. When we talk about corruption, we say that corruption is dishonesty or illegal behavior, especially of people in what? In authority. When you are carrying yourself in illegal, you're doing things that are not supposed to be done, what you're not supposed to do, then you are corrupt. Dishonesty, doing lies, you are corrupt. Then it leads to what? Corruption. And what is infrastructure? When we talk about infrastructure, according to the 9th edition of Oxford Dictionary, we say that infrastructure, these are the basic system and services that are needed by an organization for it what? For it sustainable. We talk about basic system or services. What are these basic system or services that are needed by Africa, needed by all countries worldwide? We talk about water supply, talk about education system, talk about road transport. Those are the basic system. We cannot do without them. Because we want to travel to job, we must have a good road for you to travel. Then we talk about factors that affect or leads to corruption in Africa. What are the factors that leads to corruption in Africa? We have poor tender giving. I remember when I was in high school some 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to read one of the best play ever seen. It was written by a Kenyan professor, but the late professor, Francis Mbuga, who said in the play, Betrayal in the City, used various characters who brings out how corruption is being entailed in Africa. And we have a man known as Askari, who said that you cannot achieve anything in this state, not until you have a relative who has a tall hand. What do I mean by a tall hand? Let us compare things in Africa. For example, we have the Budalangi incident of the bridge. Why do we spend a lot of money giving to unqualified engineers who at the end bring losses to us? Because he has a good kickback, then we give him the tender. Yeah. Let us talk about poor tender giving. Most of the undeveloped areas, it's not that we don't have money. We have money. We give them money to build it, to improve our infrastructure. But the problem is we give those people who have what? Good kickback. You can pay me, I give you the tender. When I give the tender, you are unqualified. You go on buying fake materials. At the end, we're gonna lose. I rest my case.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes to give your opening statements.
My friends, you are speaking about infrastructure. But now, we are talking about quality infrastructure. My name is Andai Judith from St. Agnes High School. We oppose the motion that states corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. Corruption. Transparency International defines corruption as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. When we look at Africa, Africa is corrupt. But let us look at the top 5 corrupt countries. At number 5, we have Zimbabwe. At number 4, we have Chad. At number 3, we have Burundi. At number 2, we have Sudan. Number 1, Somali. Now, I guess you have the answer, why Somalia is not developing. Forms of corruption: bribery, nepotism, tribalism, and racism. Infrastructure is the basic systems and services that are necessary for a country to run smoothly. Examples: roads, schools, and hospitals. Quality infrastructure is high standard of basic systems and services that are necessary for a country to run smoothly. Examples, good schools, well-developed roads, etc. We can say that in Africa, all countries have infrastructure. But now, we are talking about quality infrastructure. It is true to say that all countries do not have quality infrastructure, because now we could not be talking about developing countries, but we could be talking about developed countries. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for rebuttals now. Gentlemen, you have 3 minutes.
Victor Mark from St. Paul's Lubino Boys High School. I'm here to propose the motion that says corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. Corruption, corruption, corruption. When this word rings into my mind, I reflect back in Africa as a continent. It really hinders our infrastructure growth in our society. The first point I would like to talk about is about embezzlement of funds. Money that have been used to develop infrastructure have been used by leaders in high positions. Recently, we heard about the NYS saga, where close to 900 million shillings were lost and it was not accounted for. Yet we cry, doctors pay, teachers pay, poor amenities. Yet there is somebody that is leading to poor development of infrastructure in our continent, Africa. We can see that also about the Olympics. For instance, in Kenya, we saw that some of the leaders in the Olympics had to step down because of their way of conduct due to corruption. Then the other thing we can say about is, for example, in Kenya, Nairobi is our capital city. Yet there are poor drainage systems that overflows seriously. Money is being pumped out, but is it used for the purpose of it? Another thing, to my second point, is about illiteracy. Africans are not educated about the dangers of corruption. Yet we are trying to be, as a continent, to be educative. But yet we do not educate people about corruption. When you don't know about something, will you be able to know to transform a change in it? Impossible. So I'm saying that although the elections are around the corner, citizens of Kenya, we choose leaders when we close our eyes. Don't you see a change that that leader is going to change and transform our country? Yet we cry about poor infrastructure that is leading to poor infrastructural development in Africa. Last but not least is about greediness of political leaders. Political leaders come about with the glorious things, luring Africans with it. But somebody says that everyone is a rose. We all have thorns once in a while that may prick others. But whatever have it's known is how to handle a rose and enjoy beauty and scent that comes from it. I rest my case.
Thank you. Ladies, we'll hear your rebuttal. You also have 3 minutes.
Stella Iminza from St. Agnes Girls High School. I oppose the motion that states corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. First and foremost, I'm so very happy today morning, and because as a continent, we are trying to look how to bring out quality infrastructure in our continent rather than the infrastructure that we are having right now. And I'd like to counter my opponent who talked about just infrastructure. And I stand strong to tell you that as much as we are talking about infrastructure, in this case, we are looking about quality infrastructure, which includes good hospitals, good roads, good schools in our continent. We need to see about this, not just infrastructure. We need to extend to a much extent about quality infrastructure. First, I'd like to talk about lack of proper training. Take it, for instance, in our continent, we are having the people from other continents, like the Chinese people, who are helping us to construct our roads. Look about this. I'd like to use a good example of Haega to Shinyalu Road, whereby we are only having the Chinese people constructing these roads, and no person from Africa is there, because these people are coming from Asia and Europe, from other continents, to construct our roads, instead of us looking in ourselves to build our nation and our continent at large through training our people. And in this case, we are lacking enough expertise who should help us to study and help our people to be learned about this building of quality infrastructure in our continent. And in most cases, in our institution, we have heard about engineers. Let us talk about engineers. In our country, we have been importing our engineers to go to other continents to go and work there. Why? Because there's lack of these people to teach them to do this work well. These people are forced to go to other continents like Asia and Europe to do this work, to do the engineering. In Kenya, we have little people, or rather less engineers in our country. And look, in most cases, most engineers are hired from other continents, not in Africa, but in Asia and Europe. And I'd like to talk about lack of visionary leaders. We all expect for a vision leader who will bring change in our continent at large. We are lacking these leaders who will vision that come this year, we shall have good roads, we shall have good ports, we shall have good airports, or rather, in our country and in our continent to help us. But unfortunately, they are not there. Talk of Nelson Mandela, talk of other leaders. Right now, we all expect a good leader and a vision leader to bring our quality infrastructure in our continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the audience for those lovely questions. The proposers have been asked, is corruption what is causing issues such as poor drainage, or is it just mismanagement of our water resources? And the opposition have been asked how the use of expatriates to build infrastructure amounts to corruption. We'll have them respond. Third proposer, you have 3 minutes.
We killed our past, and we are also keeping ourselves busy killing our future. When we stand here and say that corruption is not the key factor that is leading to poor and quality infrastructure in Africa. I want to commence by answering a question from one of my friends from Butere Boys that asked about that is corruption or the poor management that has led to poor drainage system here in Africa. Let me not go far. You are all aware that Nairobi is the capital city of our great nation, Kenya. Nairobi being the capital city, it has the most poorest drainage system here in East Africa as a city. Why? Not because the drainage system is poor, but because the government has funded a lot of money to the leaders to make sure that they control the drainage system. But what ends? Money has been looted by the officials of the government. Two, when we say that corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa, now, what can we do to make sure that we end corruption and we build a healthy and a better society to live? One, let us have integrity as Africans. integrity. You all know that integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Africa is a continent. We are thirsty and we are questing for leaders who are integral. When we have integrity here in Africa, we shall not have leaders who shall be issuing out tenders just because so and so is my friend or so and so is my relative. Chapter 13, Article 232 of the Constitution of Kenya is talking about Leadership and Integrity Act. It states very well that state organs and all public corporations to observe high standards of professional ethics, efficient, effective, and economic use of resources. It also says that there should be fair competition and merit at the basis of appointment and promotions. We have integrity, we shall not have issues of somebody being given a tender just because he has a tall relative in the government. That will not be the case. As I wind up, I want to say that sticks and stones break bones, but words break the heart that steals the desire and hope to achieve more. And that one derails development. I rest my case.
St. Agnes girls, we'll hear your response to the question. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Mulima Dana Hachala from the St. Agnes Girls High School, and I'd like to answer the question that was posed to our team. It is not a form of corruption, but it is because we lack expertise. And I think that is what my second opposer said. It is not that Kenya is corrupt. It's because we lack the expertise. And if we have them, we are going to get quality infrastructure. Then thank you so much to my dear fellow brothers. You're telling us that we need integral leaders. We need leaders with integrity. We need leaders who can take this country to the next level. Where does corruption come in there? A question. When you sweep a house is full of dirt, stones, grass, leaves. When you sweep it and remove only the stones, will the house be clean? We are here to say corruption, yes, it's one of them, but we have more than corruption, more than what my brothers are talking about. Corruption is not the key. We have more to that. We have said we need integral leaders. Yes, give us integral leaders, and yes, infrastructure will go on. When you're sending a person who does not know what infrastructure is, what quality infrastructure is, what is that person going to do in the parliament? Nothing. He's going to bring out, I'm going there to get the money for myself. I'm going there to improve my living standards. What about us? We who voted for them. We need leaders with integrity. We need leaders with vision. Misallocation of resources and funds. You have spoken about the NYS scandal. In my knowledge, I know the government gave us a figure of 1.6 billion that got lost, not 900 billion. So let's get our facts right. Then lastly, the poor drainage in Nairobi is due to incompetent leaders. Why can't you not give us a leader who is going to help us work on this drainage system? Why can't we as leaders not work together to get this drainage system running? Corruption is not involved in the poor drainage system. Machakos is also a county. It has leaders, but the leaders are competent enough. That's why Machakos is being ranked as the cleanest county in Kenya. So my friends, I'd like to tell you that corruption is not the only key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. We have some other factors, and let us look at that first before we come to corruption. I rest my case.
We'll hear final submissions now. Lubino boys, you have 1 minute.
It's good for the opposers. They have said that corruption is the key undoing quality infrastructure in Africa, but it could be something good if you had informed us What are the key factors? Because we have only talked about lack of experts. But Kenyan or African people have gone to school. We have learned. We have the experience. But the problem is how or the leaders we have. And I like one man in this world, but the late Martin Luther King, say that darkness cannot drive out darkness, but only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, but only what? Only love can do that. And then darkness, only light can do that. So also corruption cannot drive out corruption. Only leaders who are focused, who are responsible, who wants to make a change in their nations, in their countries, can drive out corruptions. Imagine this is a pen. This is a pen. When this pen has an ink, it can write. But if I drill all the ink from this pen, then this pen cannot do anything. Yeah? If a country or a African as a content we have corruption is like a pen which doesn't have an ink, which means we cannot do anything.
St. Agnes girls, you have 1 minute as well.
We do know about the fountain pen. If you put blue ink in it, it will write blue. But if you put red ink in it, it will write, it can't write blue. So when you're telling us corruption is the only key, we have given you incompetent leaders. What are those leaders doing? Misallocation of resources. In Africa, we put politics in everything that we do. If the opposition wants to do something, the government will always differ. Why is that? We want to get the country members to be on our side. We want them to see that we are the good ones and they're the bad ones. If we clear our minds, if we clear our thoughts, if we see that infrastructure is needed in Africa, I think we are going to go far.
Lubino boys, and there is substantial information on corruption stories and embezzlement of funds meant for probably what we would call infrastructure. And we expected you to give us examples of what has been put, or even cases that are in court because of such things, or allegations that have been there, and substantiate them with facts that are there and existing. Or even though, if, for example, that wasn't there, create a hypothesis and say, if all this money has been lost, for example, there was a case of a governor who had embezzled about 5 billion shillings, probably compare what 5 billion shillings would do to infrastructure and tell us why corruption then is the key undoing, all right? So you had the leeway to do all that. And so across the board for your team, we lacked facts and evidence-based arguments, and that was penalized. St. Agnes, I think for you there was a varied examples of what is the greatest undoing. You talked about bad leadership, you talked about lack of expertise and training, and that was commendable. Sometimes a team can decide to take one thing. And I think for what stood out for you as a team is the fact that you talk about leadership. There was a lot of leadership coming out from you. Nonetheless, I think there were more examples. But I want to address Judith. Judith, for you as a fast speaker, you set the pace for your team. That means you actually utilize your full time giving submissions and telling us more. You took your time defining very well the terms in the motion. Nonetheless, you only took 1 minute and 46 seconds. And that was heavily penalized because now we were left with the whole minute plus, wondering what else to do. The other team members, yes, utilized their time. So for that was quite a detriment for your team. But all the best to both teams.
Lubino boys, the judges awarded you 64%. Please give them a round of applause. St. Agnes girls, the judges awarded you 66%, making you the winners of this debate.
Congratulations to the two teams on stage. We'd also like to thank our studio audience and our viewers back home. Keep watching and continue the conversation online. Hashtag GDC for SDGs. A big shout out to Safaricom Blaze, our sponsors, and I have been your host, Austin Nyumbo.
I am Mariam Bishar. Thank you for watching.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze by Safaricom, the Youth Network.